everyone. Welcome to New Work Conversations, where we discuss how to create fulfilling workplaces. I'm Manuel from New Work by Design, and my guest today is Natacha Neumann. My conversation with Natacha focuses on how she came to be interested in self-organization as the founder of a B2C company, and consequently going all in and transforming the company. I've only gotten to know Natacha recently for this conversation. It was Steffen, actually, who I interviewed on the previous episode, who suggested that Natacha would be a very interesting person to have a similar conversation with, and he was right. I was intrigued right away when I found out which company Natacha had founded, because I'm a satisfied customer of their products. Both my kids have consumed many Freche Freunde snacks when out and about or while traveling. If you're a parent, you probably know the fruit and veggie pouches called Freche Freunde. My wife, Nicole, and I have used them so frequently that we have been joking about writing a book about pouch parenting. That never happened, obviously. Nonetheless, we're big fans. Natacha is a founder through and through. In this conversation, she shares how she came to learn about self-organization and why she committed to making it a reality in her company, even through initial struggles. We talked about how her relationships to her team changed in the process and the armor she had to put down to do so. Despite initial resistance and personal challenges, she achieved meaningful impact and fulfillment. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Natacha. So Natacha, thank you very much for taking the time to have this conversation with me. I'm really excited to hear about your journey in shaping a company culture. And so obviously, you founded your own company, and somewhere along the lines, you decided to make a conscious shift in how this company was operating. And I would like to understand how that came about.
Yeah, sure. So, firstly, hello, Manuel. So nice to be here. So how did it come about? So I founded my company in 2010, and it took some time for me to realize that I wasn't structuring the company and living the values that for me are important. But this came years after, because the first years I was focused on getting the right product out there and satisfying the consumer needs. Actually, I was very consumer centric. And at some point, I realized, well, this is the wrong focus. I need to be looking inside in order for it to work also outside. So that was one realization. And I tried a lot of things. There was a whole period of restructuring my management team and implementing OKRs and implementing this new in management process, all these things from books and talks, and nothing was working. And I was frustrated that the values weren't being lived, people were not taking responsibility, all the problems were landing on my table. I couldn't really take time off because it was so dependent on me and my co-founder, my husband, which made the whole thing very fragile. So what brought really the shift is all this frustration, and at some point reading Reinventing Organizations from Lalou, and I've heard that from many people that they have this life-changing moment reading this book, because they realize, or at least for me, I realized, okay, there's something else out there that's just not just another tool or another tweak of the same system. It's actually rethinking completely how we lead companies and how we interact on a more human level. So so yeah, that was eye opening, and then I decided to shift, yeah, to create this change, although I didn't know how. Yeah, I mean, Lalou is super inspirational. Yeah, he opens this world up of how would it look like if we all were empowered at work, if we were all motivated, if we were all taking responsibility, if we were just more us and more human. So it's an amazing vision, but he doesn't give you a manual on how to how to do this. So then started a very long, painful period of teaching myself and learning through trial and error what works and what doesn't work.
Before we get into the learning and doing, I would like to have a closer look at the pain points that you mentioned. You said a few things. Can you give us an example to make it more concrete what that looked like?
Yeah, would love to. So one of our values is responsibility. Another one of our values was trust and respect. Another one of our values was flexibility. Yeah. So when I say we weren't living our values, is we weren't structured, or we weren't also interacting with one another to really give people responsibility, for really them to embrace that, to really be flexibly reacting on things. I mean, when you have a hierarchy, and when you do have levels of communication, then you can't be flexible, you can't be fast, you can't be autonomous. And ultimately, if you do have a hierarchy and processes, then you're not fundamentally trusting people that they're going to do their work, and they're going to do it well. So just maybe because that's, I think, very vague for a lot of people. Yeah, not living values. What does that mean? I think that puts it a little bit more specifically. I mean, there were also a lot of things. I had the feeling that through creating this management team and trying to solve all the big issues within this management team, that, and behind closed doors, we would meet and discuss and then come out with a solution that firstly was often far away from the problem. Yeah, so maybe something was going wrong in one of the departments, and it was coming up to us, and we were coming up with a solution, and we're far away from this problem. So we were coming up with a solution that's based on a lot of assumptions, not directly understanding the pain points, not living the pain points on a daily basis. Um, and then plus, by just delivering a solution, what a lot of the rest of the team was missing out is what brought to this. What was the thinking process behind this? Yeah, and this is something I very much had to learn along my journey, because I'm somebody that, I think already 3 steps ahead and then deliver a sentence, and nobody can catch up on what I'm saying or doesn't understand where it's coming from. And really, yeah, that's part of it, like realizing, okay, if you need to be behind this action that needs to be taken, you need to understand firstly, where's the thinking process. And it's even better if you do the thinking process yourself, yeah, because you're at the source of the pain. You're at you are motivated to solve this yourself. And my role is a lot more an enabling of that rather than solving it. So yeah, so basically seeing that we were too far away from things, and because of then also the team members not understanding what was happening behind those closed doors, a certain mistrust. Yeah, we were coming to a certain solution. Is, well, why is that a good solution? Why are we doing this? What's based on this decision on? So I felt, I mean, this was maybe purely my perception, but that a certain mistrust was developing between the bulk of the team and the management team, which, yeah, alienates then both parts. And through that, mistrust in general in the company, from one department to the other. Yeah, a lot of things not flowing from one place to the other, because it was going through management channels and things weren't being dealt with directly. And I said also things being so dependent on me. I mean, yeah, also the inability to really take time, and not being able to take time off. Yeah, because some of the big decisions were still being made by me and my co-founder. And yeah, when you're on holiday, well, the business doesn't take a break. So this feeling of always being on, and nobody carrying that weight of those big decisions. I mean, this is a very personal pain point, but feeling, yeah, I can never disconnect, because all these people and all this business are relying on me to be taking the big and important decisions at all times, whether I'm on holiday or whether I've just, had given birth to children or whatever it is.
What would that look like? You would go on holiday, but you would still get calls every day and have to make decisions?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I actually for a very, very long time would not have my laptop on me. Yeah. I would, wherever I would go, yeah, I'd go out in the evening and still have my laptop on me, just in case. Yeah. And I had 3 children. My first child was very much, he was born on the weekend. On Monday morning, I was in the office. So it was also taking a very little time at that, in those phases, also for my children. Yeah. And it's also a big big regret, prioritizing at the time, because I felt like it needed it. The company was too fragile and too dependent on me, unfortunately, which is my own shortcoming as a leader, making it so fragile and so dependent.
As you just said, you have 3 children. In that, it's very similar. You can make your children very dependent on you, and you think you help them, but in the long run, they don't learn to take responsibility themselves, and you actually make it hard for yourself.
Yeah, yeah,
So
beautiful.
I've certainly been there.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I often say, my children have taught me so much that I bring into the company, and yeah, and everything that I live in the company, and in the other way around, everything that I've learned in
Mm.
companies, especially in self-management, I bring back home. I see so many parallels. That would probably, just seeing talking about those parallels would probably take us a few hours.
Totally. That's another podcast, and that's also where I got last time with Steffen. Is like on the fundamental level, it's all relating, right? It's just a different context.
Yeah,
It could be work, it could be parenting, it could be being a good partner or a good friend. On a basic level, it's all about relating, and the same patterns show up.
yeah. And it's funny because I also saw those parallels in my children's stages of development and the company stages of
Mm.
development. I mean, in the very early days where it's very physical. Yeah, it's doing absolutely everything. It's sleeping very little. So it's very, yeah, it's a very kind of doing, doing, doing. And then you come into a phase of letting go. Yeah. And puberty, that's what it is. It's an emancipation of the children. And for me, this transformational period was very much the puberty of my company, with all the pain that also puberty comes with. Yeah, it was this letting, yeah, not making it dependent on me anymore, and letting it go its own way, and trusting that it can, and hoping that all the right values have been installed into it, that it will do the best possible. So yeah, I see I see this journey as a very parallel journey. I also often ask myself now the question, wanting to start up a new business now, is it possible to start a company, or I wish to start a company already on that level, yeah, already in a self-managed way, which I don't have an experience with. I have an experience with just transforming, which many tell me it's almost more difficult, because you have to change things,
Mm.
change is painful. And I often ask myself, I'd like to believe it's possible, but I haven't had the experience yet. So we can do another podcast in a few years, and I can tell you my
Yeah.
experience there.
Is that around the corner that something new is starting?
Yeah, it's still early days, but yeah, it's in the making.
Oh, cool. So back to the previous
Yes.
venture, to that moment where you felt these pain points, and then you read Reinventing Organizations. What was then the wish you had? What were you daydreaming about? Oh, this is what my company should be.
Mm. I was, yeah, I mean, I guess it's what Lalu sells. I was dreaming of this company where we don't wear masks, and we're all authentic, and we're all, yeah, human based connections, yeah, rather than what we, to a certain extent had, although, yeah, we probably weren't too bad. We hardly had hierarchies. Yeah, we had maybe two levels, but still it was still a um power difference. Yeah, and I think for me, this vision of redistributing the power across everybody within the company was the vision. And through that, I think one of my biggest realization was realizing that the need that I have, the need of, I mean, the reasons why I even founded my own company, my need to have a positive impact in the world, my needs to do something and to do it well, my need to be autonomous and free to decide, my need to belong to something greater than myself. All these needs are the needs of everybody else. Everybody else wants exactly that. And I found it thinking, okay, I'm going to satisfy all these needs, and I'm going to do a company for me. And yes, it will be for the world, because it will provide these products for the world and do a greater good in, in nutrition for the world, for the consumers. But I never stopped to think that my team and the people that are closest to me, I mean, the people I spent, 2/3 of my wake woken hours with, have exactly the same needs in me. And it sounds really ridiculous when I say it now, but actually this realization for me was super powerful. And that was this vision, yeah, to satisfy that not just in myself, but in everybody within the company.
Mm. You said there was lots of learning that needed to be done.
Mm.
How did you go about that? What were the sources you tried to get the information from?
Yeah. So I read a lot of books. I picked up all the books I could on the topic. I also talked to a lot of founders, and that was actually a very interesting process because I talked to I basically wrote out within the startup community who knows somebody that's done something similar, and I ended up by having a lot of conversations. And in this process, I mainly met people that thought they were doing something similar but weren't. Yeah, really people that said, "Yeah, yeah, we are." And once you ask a little bit deeper, you realize, no, you're still making you're still all calling all the shots. It's not because you officially don't have a hierarchy or you have a ping pong table or whatever it is. So people actually, fooling themselves and thinking that they were truly living this, but actually when you dig in, weren't. Or people that had horror stories. Talked to also some people that were saying, "Yeah, we tried and we did it, and it doesn't work." Especially when it comes to something like holacracy and something where you're implementing also processes and not just a mindset. A lot of people saying, "Yeah, we did it and it didn't work, so we're reverting back," or "We didn't. We didn't. There were too many problems, or it was taking too long, and we went back to old habits." So it was actually very frustrating hearing these two stories, but I wasn't deterred. I wasn't deterred because, on the contrary, it was good for me to hear everything that had gone wrong and all what was not working and all that wasn't really self management. So hearing that negative, I think it's funny when I reflect back. I think it's probably one of my strengths. Yeah, I'm the youngest of four children, and I think that's what I've always done as a person. I've looked at all the mistakes that my siblings made and didn't make them. um, so maybe it's just the way I am as a person. But yeah, that's the inspiration I got out of it, and thought I believe this is possible. Yeah, I mean there are also companies on a global level, and also there are examples of company that do that very very successfully. So I believed in it. That's why I carried on. But that was my inspiration, mainly people and books.
As you were starting out with, I asked other founders, I was wondering if that was a frustrating experience, and if you wouldn't get more examples that told you either we don't know about this, we've never tried anything like this, so this doesn't make sense, or we tried it and it failed.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it. I find it interesting to understand what is it about someone who doesn't then turn back and say, oh, okay, maybe this isn't such a great idea after all. Maybe this is just a nice story, but it doesn't actually work in the quote unquote real world.
Mm.
And you said, we're the youngest in your family. Me too. I only have one sister, but maybe there is a pattern there as well. I need to find more data points if that is true.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I think a lot of this process, because for me it was a big personal growth process, and part of it was letting go of the ego. At the same time, there were a lot of things where my ego helped me. Yeah, I mean, I think at some point, especially at the beginning phase, it was very much this is a challenge. A lot of people have not succeeded. I think I might go for this and try it. So, funny enough, I think the ego often stood in the way, and freeing myself from it or freeing myself as much as I can from it has been very, very important in this process. But it has also been my ally in some things.
So just to see if I get this correctly, because others didn't succeed in it, that made you want it even more. It's like, okay, then I'm going to be the one who makes it
I
work.
think that was a part of that as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate. That makes sense. So you didn't let yourself be deterred, and you came back to the company with, this excitement about this new thing. without knowing exactly what it would be looking like, but wanting to try things. And clearly you were in the position of power to actually make it happen. I'm wondering, did you meet any resistance within the team, but maybe also other stakeholders?
So from other stakeholders, no. So from shareholders, they were always hands off. So they're no. From the team, yes, but not from the get go. I mean, I think from the get go, I mean, maybe it's important also to say how I did this. Yeah, and I did it. One others can learn on how bad I did learn from my mistakes. So basically, I was super motivated to do this, and we had always our yearly retreat. We used to go. We still do once a year in September, offsite for three to 4 days. And this offsite was coming up, so I thought, hey, this is the perfect occasion because it's not something that you can kick off and start, on a Monday between 9 and 9:30. So the offsite was the perfect occasion, but I wasn't really prepared. I didn't really know. I knew I had the vision. I knew the why it was important. I had no clue how. But yeah, so basically that's what I did. I stood up in front of everybody and told them, this vision of that I had and what I wanted for the company and what I wanted for them and how much better it will be. And so this I painted for them, or I tried to paint for them, but I didn't know how we would do it. I didn't know what the next step would be. I didn't know what that would look like. So yeah, the first instant did create resistance from some. I mean, some people didn't get it. They're like, "What are you talking about? This is how we are anyway, and how we work." Some people said, "Natacha, about time." So they were very few, but some got it. um, and but the bulk of the team were in panic. Yeah, what does this mean? What does this mean? I mean, I'm telling you, there's not going to be bosses anymore, and there's not going to be a hierarchy, and that we're gonna, work differently. And yeah, so a lot of people were just, what's that going to mean for me? What's that going to mean for my job? What's that going to mean for my title? What's that going to mean um, for my paycheck? It released a lot of stress. So I think more than fighting back at it, it was more just this uncertainty that wasn't my intention. Yeah, I was just really, on the contrary, I was super motivated and excited about this. I was hoping to just excite them with it, and yeah, didn't think that, I mean, this fundamental change would release so much stress by people. But it makes so much sense. Yeah, radical change. I mean, change is always a stress releaser by people.
Hmm. Reminds me of a saying, fear is just excitement without the breath.
Yeah,
So, so you might be very excited about it. And you actually have the same response in others, but it's the same coin, but they're on the other side. It was like, oh, this is new information. I don't know what this is going to be look like, and this uncertainty creates a lot of anxiety. Yeah, that's totally natural response. Which still, when you're on the other side and you're really excited about something, you don't see it. It's like, oh, okay, this now creates fear in you. I did not anticipate this.
yeah,
So, for context, as far as I understand it, the company was around 80 people
yeah,
at that stage,
exactly.
80 employees. So paint me a picture. What did that look like? You're at this offsite, and like you have a keynote, and you've got slides prepared, or what did that look like?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. It was more than that. There was also a few workshops that was around, but basically the kickoff of it was a keynote presentation given by myself and my husband, standing up there with full motivation. We did a very long Q&A as well. Yeah, because this anxiety got triggered, and then there were all these questions of, yeah, but what and when and how, and which we had no answers to. But I remember going into, it was getting dark outside and going into later in the night than it was expected to, because there were all these questions. Yeah, but originally it was a keynote presentation that then turned into more of a dialogue with the team. But yeah, very frontal. Yeah, it was us two standing up there with the team sitting down.
How did that feel for you? What reaction was coming up for you as you're there, you're very excited about it, but then you realize, oh wow, this creates a lot of fear for other people. What was your reaction? Not necessarily the one you showed, but the one you felt.
Yeah, the one I think it was the one I showed, the one I felt was the same. I mean, I thought, wait till they see how great this is, and that there's not going to be, it's all going to be great. Yeah, I mean, I was still completely underestimating. So this is really on the kickoff. Yeah, I would answer this differently if we're talking 1, 2, 3 months into the implementation. But during this offsite, I was like, it's okay. It's normal that they're stressed. I underestimated. I like change, and I think I always underestimate how much that anxiety that gives people, because I myself feel that very little. So I was like, oh yeah, I underestimated that, but it's okay. They're going to be so happy, and it's going to be so great for them that within no time they'll all be thanking me. Yeah, that's quite funny actually. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, another thing that's easy to be unaware of is I don't know how long how it was between this keynote and reading the book Reinventing Organizations, but I'm assuming it would have been at least a few weeks, a few months.
few months. Yeah,
Yeah. And you did all this research, and so you had all this time to get used to this idea. And then they obviously, it was all news to them in that moment.
yeah,
And I think it's often easy to forget that, oh, people weren't on that journey with me.
yeah,
They couldn't read my thoughts while I was going through it and figuring all this out
yeah,
and making like the strong conviction. So to just be empathetic and realize, okay, this is going to be new for you, and it's going to take you some time, maybe also months, to get used to that idea as
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. Definitely, it's a process. If that's probably the best way to describe this whole. And from
Yeah.
realizing it to implementing it, it's definitely a process, and it takes time. Yeah, we're talking about fundamentally changing the way we feel about things and do things and perceive things. I mean, that's yeah. I mean, I see it now when I help founders and their teams. It's it is a process, because you need to try and you need to have like little successes, and through that you start perceiving things differently, and then you try something else, and that's why it all builds on top of each other, and it's not something that you from that one day to the other have a major shift in how you see the world. Yeah, that's very rare. It's very rare. I think,
Mm.
we maybe only with huge crisis and drama we have that experience actually in our life. Yeah, if you suddenly had a near death experience or whatever, people have a sudden shift. Otherwise it's what growth is. It's a progressive change from day to day. That takes time and effort. Yeah, and that's also something interesting, because we're trying to do it at the same time. I mean, at least we were trying to radically change something while we were growing very fast as a company, had a lot of operational processes going on, or tweaking things also because we were growing as a brand geographically. It was just something in parallel to all the other stuff that we were doing as well.
It's not that the business stops. Like, all right, now let's take a year to change how we operate.
Yeah,
It always has to happen during full operation, and that obviously makes it a challenge.
yeah.
So, as as you went along changing things, how did this transformation affect your day to day within the company?
So at the beginning, it wasn't clear. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't clear also for me. How am I gonna be doing things differently as well? So at the beginning, we set up change agent groups that worked on defining how is this going to be different. Yeah, how is this? What are we going to be doing differently? We know we want to live this way, we want to work this way, but how do we do things when we are this way? So I think, yeah, that was the first thing, and that was for me also. I was a little bit starting to really look at what am I doing, where am I involved, where am I taking decisions, where do I need to be getting out of, where do I want to be getting out of, what are things where I don't want to or I can't currently. Yeah, so it was very much analyzing again, the what I was doing and the status quo of the business in parallel, while teams were working to looking at how can we structurally change what we are doing or how we are doing things so that it can work. And this was a very, I'd say, frustrating period because there was a lot of ideas. I mean, not just on my personal level of thinking, okay, what do I need to be changing for me, but also in the company level, what do we need to be doing differently? There was a lot of talks and a lot of exchange and a lot of ideas, but very little. Okay, this is it. Yeah, this is what we're doing. Very little decision making on, okay, from this is it, or this is what we're going to try. Yeah, and this is what we're going to give a chance. So it was a lot of talking, but not much acting. Was that period, which was very frustrating. Yeah, for
How long did that take?
that was a couple of months directly after presenting it in the offside. This was a couple
Mhm.
of months of. I mean, it felt like people, including myself, running around like headless chickens. Yeah, it was like we've said, no bosses are taking the decisions for everybody anymore. But how do we make decisions and who's doing this? And it was coming up to the end of the year. Who's deciding on salaries? There was all these things like up there and in the air and no solution. And everybody having all kinds of good ideas, but that's all there were. There are like a lot of ideas all over, but there was no process to actually come to decision making. Yeah. So that lasted a couple of months. And then at some point, in order to not drag out this process, because I was feeling the frustration was increasing more and more day by day. I made a decision. Yeah, I said, okay, what we're going to implement is holacracy because I felt this chaos needed some structure. Not because I was 100% convinced that holacracy is the way, but I felt like, okay, before we do all kinds of groups and start defining what is the structure for us and try to reinvent the wheel and think about all this, we could, but this will take so much energy and time, and I'm going to burn so many people along the way. I thought, let's implement holacracy, yeah, to almost its fullest extent. And then that has a lot of processes where we can question everything. It has all these decision making processes and everything, and then we can start changing things, but in a structured way, and already, yeah, something that gives us direction on how to do that. So that was a top-down decision, yeah. Say, okay, holacracy is the way we're going, and then started a period of implementing that because obviously, holacracy has a lot of structure. We need to map out all the roles, all the circles, teach everybody tactical meetings, governance meetings, etc., etc. There was a lot of learning new things, a lot of doing, as again doing a lot of things in parallel. But at least I had the feeling um, there was movement forward. There was change happening rather than just running around like crazy, which were the first few months.
Looking at all this, what would you do differently today if you were to do it again in the same setup? I mean, you're about to do it again, but from different starting point.
Yeah,
But if you were again in like this offsite is coming up with 80 people,
yeah,
how would you go about it, and the maybe months after?
yeah. I think I would have probably picked holacracy or picked a structure, a fixed structure from the beginning, but a structure that allows me to change that structure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what also, I mean, that's how we ended up by using holacracy, that we were using the governance processes to also change fundamentally how we structure, how we make decisions, how we are, yeah, how we do our meetings, etc. Um, so I would from day one start something like that, whether it's holacracy or something else that's out there, or an own made structure, just to have this base, to have this order from day one. I would probably split it a little bit so that there's one part that it's two offsites. Yeah, probably one that's more motivational and more people, so that people understand what we're about to embark on and what it means, and really getting their buy-in for it. I think that's something that I didn't do. Yeah, I didn't. I was, and I think that's also super important to say now. I was not far enough in my personal development journey at the time to even know a lot of these things. Yeah, these are things in retrospect. But then something I would definitely do differently now is to get the buy-in. Yeah, to tell people, look, this is my vision. This is how I would like to work. But it is going to be work. We are going to have to learn new structures. We are going to have to work on ourselves. Um, but it's going to be amazing because we will develop as people, and we will fundamentally change the way we work. Are you in or are you not? So really getting the buy-in from day one. That's something I would do differently. Yeah, and then implement the structure faster. Yeah, so that at least there's a way for people to find themselves again. And I say that, and for me, I very often say structure is not that important. Yeah, structure is far less important than changing the mindsets that people have. But I do think that it holds that space. Structure has the power of holding that space so that you can start changing your mindsets, that you can start daring, so that you actually know where you're at. Yeah, that you have something to go back to defend a certain way of being. So I do think the structure is very, very powerful in that. So I would do that from off the bat. I would have used that, do one offsite to pitch or to present and get the buy-in, and another offsite to train on all the new structures. And then I would have invested all the time and money on in the ongoing business to start fundamentally changing the mindsets. And this is something that we did, but we did way too late because I didn't realize how important it was. I thought, and I think that's the mistake a lot of people do implementing something like this, is they work on the structure and processes, and they don't work on fundamentally, yeah, shifting this perception on how do we see each other, how do we see ourselves, how do we see the world, yeah. And that's where the magic happens, not in the structure. Structure just gives you that freedom to be able to start thinking differently.
What I can see in what you're describing is that the structure would have taken away a lot of the uncertainty.
Yeah.
Right. What now? Would have, as you said, would give people those guardrails. Actually makes me think of liberating structures.
Mm-hmm.
It's a set of facilitation tools. I don't know if you ever heard about those,
Yeah.
but the term itself, liberating structures, is meant as a paradox, but it's how it is. Like, you get a really very clear structure, and within that you feel a lot more freedom.
Yeah.
Because you know where the boundaries are.
Exactly.
But when there are no boundaries, I have to tread carefully. I can't actually move quickly because I don't know if I'm overstepping at any place.
Yeah.
But if I know the boundary is like 100 meters that way, I can go into full sprint until I get closer.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I've become a big advocate at. Yeah, I mean, I love things like the clarity of roles. Yeah, for me, that's so empowering. Yeah, and a lot of companies that are not self-managed say, yeah, it's important to have clear responsibilities. It's like, yeah, they need to be, and they need to be able to, to be challenged, to be expanded, and to be, talked about. Because if you don't have that, if I don't 100% know this is what this is what I'm responsible for, and this is my scope and where I can move. If I know that, as you say, then within the scope, I can do whatever I want. I am free. If it's a fluffy definition and I don't quite know, then very often I freeze. Yeah, very often what I see is that people actually don't do rather than do and risk being wrong.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And roles is also a great example for, it can be very liberating, and it can be very, closing you in, depending on how you do it. Like, if you had a role that's very clear on your scope, but is on an abstraction level that leaves you with a lot of interpretation. How do I fulfill this role? That can feel very liberating.
Mm.
If I give you an exact to-do list of these are the steps you're doing every day, and this is not matching your level of autonomy that you're actually capable of, that will be excruciating.
Yeah.
So you can use the same tool, and it can be very powerful, or it can be, very, very dominating in a power sense.
Yeah, very true. Very true. But I'm a big fan of liberating structures. I mean, I do think structures Yeah, and as you say, these rules then can set us free. Can then very, very clearly say this is the name of the game, yeah, and it must be structures that then allow us to move freely and to change things freely and to be able to voice when things are not as we see them. And that's what I found in a lot of these holocratic processes, that it does that. Yeah. If I have a if I have a tension, yeah, that I have a process that allows me to deal with that tension, yeah, that allows me to release actually this anxiety that I might be having for not knowing what my job description is, or somebody's fulfillment of a job is impeding me from doing a good job, or it might even be on a personal level. So this, yeah, that liberates a lot, that I have a framework in which I can actually solve all my own tensions. Yeah, that's the real power of it, actually. To be able to self-manage means I can take responsibility for what's bothering me and what I do, and I can only do that when as a framework that allows me this freedom. Plus, when I'm not with my personal blockages, and when I dare to do and all the inner work. But that's why I love starting with the structures, because at least that's also something that people can see and feel and hold
Mm.
on to. That's why I always say, structures without mindset, you might as well give up straight away, because it doesn't, they won't solve the problem. Um, but at least at the beginning of an implementation, what's cool is that they give people, really this, they perceive that things have changed. They see this movement forward, because mindset takes time.
And that's another common theme I see uh, people referring to with experience in the space, that counter to maybe an initial belief, self-organization actually needs more structure rather than less,
Mm,
because you need to have agreement on how do we operate with each other. If we don't have the convenience of deferring to our boss, or like, what should we do here? Well, you need to figure it out yourself. How do we do this?
yeah,
And for that, you need the structure.
yeah, and that's something that freaks out a lot of founders. Yeah, I mean, when you say to most founders, if in order to do this, you're going to have to put on a lot of processes and structure. And what they're hearing is, this is going to kill my freedom. And it's
Hmm.
funny, because that's the first, and probably also with a team. Yeah, I mean, when structure and processes and are often more perceived to be a killer of freedom rather than enabler of freedom. So I think I often get that also, that people believe that, and I think it's crazy, because it sounds like, yeah, as you said, it sounds like a contradiction. I mean, their brain structures, but it's true. It's more
Yeah.
crazy, but it's true.
Another area I would like to dive into is how did these changes, so over the course of time of this transition, maybe a year, maybe two, how did that change your relationships to the people
Mm.
that you were working with?
Yeah, I think I was never very close to the people before, although it probably didn't feel that way. We would go out for drinks after work, and I mean, there was a social relationship, yeah, to a lot of people on the team. But still, I didn't. Nobody would open up their heart to me, and I wouldn't necessarily open up my heart to them. And for me, that's, being able to share your feelings and thoughts and needs with people is pretty much, what defines a deep connection with another human being. So I don't think I had those deeper connections with them before, and probably because of the two directions. Yeah, for me, it was like, I need to be the boss, which means I need to always know better. I need to show that I'm strong and know what the solution is to our problems. I need to show safety. So part of it was, my blockages and my false perception of what leadership is. And also from the other direction, people, in the team looking up to me, and, you know, fearful of maybe expressing, maybe fearful of expressing, their feeling and thought to somebody that actually has power over them, and that, yeah, I could have changed their salary or fired them. Yeah, I mean, this is the power
Mm.
dynamics that happen in traditional management. And how that changed is I changed the way I see people, and that for me, is I think that's very important actually here to say, because I learned to interact and see people differently. Yeah, to not think that I'm better than, not to think that my needs are more valuable than the needs of the one in front of me, which, if I'm very honest, it was not where I was always at. Yeah. So this was part of the process, really being on eye level, you say in German, eye level with everybody in the team. So really seeing them as the human being that they are, and valuing their needs and thoughts. But what was really hurting me at the beginning of doing that is I felt like I was doing it, but they weren't doing it back. Yeah, because I was still in their eyes the boss. Yeah, I was still somehow, whether it's I had carried a position of authority, or because of looking up and some kind of admiration or whatever it is. Yeah, they weren't coming always to that level. So that was for me painful at the beginning. Yes, feeling that, and it took a lot of work. It took a lot of work to. It took, yeah, twice and three times and four times more work to really get them there. And that was through a lot of workshops and through a lot of doing things together. Yeah, I mean, we used to do all kinds of sharing reflection exercises, of in our retreats going deeper in, and having more time for, really getting to know one another, really getting to know who the person there was, and really getting them to lay down their masks. Yeah, that's using the expression from Lalou. But that took time. Yeah, I mean, but for some less, obviously, for some more, for some never, if I'm very honest. So that the relationships definitely changed. I'm still very close to a lot of people in the company, even though I'm operatively no longer in the company. They, yeah, not just friendships, but also really valuing the person that's in front of me and seeing them as the human that they are. And I think that's the base of all good human relationships, although we forget it in our society, unfortunately. Yeah, so that changed, and but yeah, it was a struggle, and it was one of my hardest struggle, I think. Yeah, seeing that I'm doing all this effort, but it takes two. Yeah, it always takes two. Like, I can give the
Mm.
room and give the safe space and open up completely, and and not and really see them. But if they're not doing that back, I can just carry on doing that, carrying on doing that, carrying on doing the hope that they come and meet me at this eye level. But it's no then, at
Yeah.
a certain extent, it's then no longer in my control. Yeah, I can only be responsible for what is in my control. And that was also a big learning. Yeah, I mean, I was still at some point trying to also taking responsibility for that, and learning that I can only take responsibility for what I can directly influence.
Yeah. So logically, I I can look at this and say, oh, of course, you were in the position of power, so it was easier for you to open up because you had less to lose.
Mhm.
Whereas they could have still opened up and lost their job, reduced their salary, the things you said, the things you had power over. So I think logically it makes sense that it takes people who are not in leadership roles longer to dare to open up and be vulnerable. But I'm curious on an emotional level, what made it painful for you that they didn't? What was the story you were telling yourself about them or you that made it painful?
I think what made it painful is that it doesn't, that it's like giving trust, yeah, giving trust and not receiving it back. It feels like a one-way street then, and that was
Mm.
often, very often, in the early days of the implementation, exactly the feeling I had, this feeling of like, it's so difficult working on all this structure and having one-on-one talks and really trying to, you know, to get people to get out of their shells, and all this stuff. And I was getting resistance. I was getting people far leaving the company because it was all too much, or they didn't want, or they'd rather work somewhere where they could just do their job. And it was this, yeah, this feeling of like I'm putting so much in, and a lot of it is for them, and this feels like they're not thankful for it. Yeah, they're on the contrary,
Mm.
they're criticizing me. I felt like I was being continuously criticized for something that I felt like I was doing for them. I don't know. I mean, talking back about children parallels, like, now in winter
Mm.
when I tell my children to put a sweater on or a jacket on when they go outside, and they're telling me I'm so evil because I'm trying to tell them what to do, and it's like, but it's cold out there. You're gonna get cold if you don't. It felt a little bit like this, yeah, that I was trying to do something
Yeah.
to be good to them, and they were attacking me back and attacking me at the point where I was opening up and being vulnerable. So I was also very, very raw and sensitive. Yeah. And that was tough. And that was really tough. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. I'll rephrase and you can correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like that feeling of I put so much trust forward and you don't trust me back. And that just makes me not feel like, um, yeah, I guess being trusted is one of those basic human needs. It's just the people I'm close with, I want to be trusted by them. So otherwise it creates this dynamic. So it's lonely at the top.
Yeah.
That's I think the typical feeling of it.
And I think I read at some point this leadership fallacy, or I don't know what it was called, that from off the bat, most people are mistrusting their
Mm.
their leaders. Yeah. You It's more often that a leader has a neutral or trustworthy relationship from day one to somebody in their team, as normally you start and you're already mistrusting, what are they going to want from me, and when are they going to ask me to do extra hours and try to negotiate down my pay increase, or they're already coming with a mistrust. And it's funny because when I read that, and I think I read it at some point where I was in this phase of sensing that, it actually
Mm.
helped me reading this, because I was like, "Oh, it's not me. It's actually like something that's normal. It's a fallacy."
Yeah.
And that made
Yeah.
it better, because I thought, "Okay, well, if I know that, then it's okay. I'm just gonna have to work twice. Like, it's not fair, but then it's the name of the game. I have to work twice as much."
It's funny how if something's really bothering us, and once we read about that, that's a phenomenon. It even has a name.
Yeah.
Suddenly, it feels doesn't feel so bad anymore. And I think the effect is there because we realize, oh, we're not alone in this.
Mm.
I'm not the only one who's struggling with this. There's a lot of other people out there who have the same issue. Okay,
Yeah.
now I can relax. It's not just me as the one single person in the universe who's dealing with this shit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it helps, and that's what one thing that for me really helped me also in this process is talking to other people, talking to other people, and realizing exactly what you just said. Like, it's not just me having these issues and feelings and thoughts. It's perfectly normal. Like, everybody else out there has had similar thoughts and feelings, and yeah. And one thing I wanted to go back on that you said it's a lot easier for a leader to give trust and to be vulnerable as the other way around. And I'm not sure. I mean, there is, now that I'm trying to help a lot of leaders to do that, I realize how much it's a certain personality of person that, and especially I deal a lot with founders that founds a company. Yeah, we often have a lot of baggage. We often have a lot to prove to ourselves and to the world. We have a lot of pressure from shareholders that have high expectations of us, and so I'm not sure. I'm not sure
Mm.
it's that much easier for founders to do that first.
You
Yeah,
might be right. I've never been in that position myself, so I don't have that experience. So I probably empathize more with the people looking up rather than the founder who is, trying to hold the company. And I totally get that it's not, it also has a lot of personal
mm,
factors as well. my comment was more on in terms of power
Yeah. Yeah.
dynamics. That makes it easier if you have the power. But I totally agree and understand that there's a lot of other factors
Yeah.
at play
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. But you're right. And the power dynamics definitely makes it easy. But I do think that the personality of the typical, if there is such a thing of the typical founder, makes it difficult. I mean, somebody that powers through at all costs and is willing to sacrifice so much for a company, and is a specific kind of person, and that that develops a certain toughness, that then is hard to 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 get through again. Yeah, it's hard to get that armor back off when you've had to be so tough for so long to come to where you are, to raise the money that you've raised, to free yourself from the day job, to whatever it is. Yeah. So just for all those leaders out there that hasn't haven't done it yet, I understand the struggle.
Yeah, there's you actually made me think of a study I once read. It's been 6 or 7 years ago, and I don't know if I can find it again, so I was hesitating to mention it because I probably won't do it justice. But it goes something along the lines of that. So there is a study who shows the more power you accrue, or the higher the leadership levels you go, the less you can have empathy for the people
Mm,
that you lead. That's shown as an effect that doesn't justify it or anything, but it's a de
yeah,
facto the case. So I think you have to actively work against that if you don't want to
yeah,
let that happen. And I think that plays into this
yeah,
dynamic as
yeah.
well.
You have to toughen up over that journey, and as a result, then yeah, it's a thicker armor that needs to fall off, and that's more work. Yeah, I that makes sense. And you see it, yeah, you see it in business, and you see it in corporate world a lot. You see it in politics. Even people that originally had a lot of empathy, a lot of heart, and wanted to do well, they come in a position of power and have forgotten who or why they're even doing what they're doing. Yeah, but that's a whole
Yeah,
different podcast as
that's
well.
probably the most that's the most frustrating thing for me about politics is like, in order to get to a position of power, you have to become part of the system and probably along the way lose why you wanted to get into it
Yeah.
in the first place. But as you say, well, we'll leave that for
Yes,
another
but
talk.
similar in business. Yeah, I mean, I see it less in the star world, but I see it in the corporate world. Yeah? I mean, people that really then also climbed those ladders, and yeah, and when you come to the top, then by then you've become a tough bastard very often.
Mhm. One last question about the transformation. I'm wondering, yeah, looking back at it, once it was done, even though you're not never really finished with it, I suppose. What was the thing that you were most proud of?
Hmm. What was I most proud of? I think I was proud of myself. I mean, obviously, I was proud of what we've reached in the team, and I think I need to tell you a little anecdote to give that, to explain this. A few years before, I sold a share of the company, yeah, because we needed cash within the company. And with this move, a lot of people congratulated me. A lot of people were like, "Oh, that's great, amazing! You're selling shares in a company. This is what the whole startup journey is all about, and this is amazing. Congratulations!" And at that point, I felt so shitty, because I was like, "This is not why I founded. I didn't find for financial interests, and I felt like I haven't fulfilled my purpose. Yeah, I haven't fulfilled anything very much good in this world. I felt very, very low at the time. And this was before the cultural transformation. And then afterwards, I felt, well, wow, now I've had a positive impact. Now I've changed lives. And that was for me the most fulfilling along the journey, seeing people blossom and, really change as people, and change not just in a business setting, but also having the courage and energy to change things in their personal lives that was bothering them, and seeing those things along the journey was the most fulfilling thing. And that's why at the end, yeah, if there was an end of this transformation, I was like, wow, now people should be tapping me on the back and telling me I've done something amazing because I've managed to, through this, change lives. Yeah, that really changed lives. And I was finally proud of myself. And yeah, I didn't need the patting on the back and it was okay. But I could, yeah, I could hold my head up high and said I've done something good. And that was amazing. Yeah. But yeah, I'm also proud, obviously, of the whole team because it wasn't, yeah, this personal development process and developing ourselves. I mean, I went through a tough few years, but so did a lot of other people on the team. And those that stuck through it, it wasn't easy, but they also have fruit to reap of, as well as I do, of this work.
What would you say was the biggest change about you? If I was an employee in the company through this entire time, or pick one that was, how would they describe how you changed?
They would probably say I got softer. Would probably how they they would phrase it. Yeah, I think I was tough. I was. I mean, I guess I didn't see people for people. If I'm very honest. Before I I was a woman in business, a female entrepreneur. There's not many of them. So yeah, talking about getting tough, I think I had to toughen up. Little sister of a
Mhm.
big brother, I had to toughen up from day one. I feel. So yeah, I was a lot tougher and more closed off. And over this, I mean, if they would say it in just a few words, they would say I got lots softer, more emotional, more, more reachable. Yeah, as a person, or you can connect more to her, more human.
Mm. Wonderful. So if you could send yourself a
Mm,
letter to maybe the day after you finish the Reinventing
mhm.
Organizations book, and you could give yourself, some advice of how to proceed, what would be in it?
How to proceed? I mean, I think I answered that. At least from the kickoff, I would get the buy-in. I would reassure people a lot more from the beginning to not get that anxiety straight away. I would implement structures faster so that I can really get to working on influencing the mindsets. I would, I don't know, I mean, I would have needed to work on myself before more, but I think I'm not sure I could have done it without doing it within the journey. But I think
Mm.
also what I would tell myself is don't doubt yourself so much. Yeah, I think in the process, because it was so hard and there was, resistance on many levels, there were many times when I was like, am I am I doing the right thing? Am I the right person to even be doing this? Am I far enough myself to be able to implement this? Will it ever work? Am I barking up the wrong tree? I mean, this was, I mean, this the tough part of this implementation was 2 years, and I cried on a very, very regular basis and almost lost energy along the way more than once. So I think I would try and save myself a little bit of that pain and tell myself it's all going to be okay. Don't doubt it. It'll be good in the
Mm.
end.
If someone was in that situation right now and they're doubting, am I the right person to pull this off? What would you tell them? How do you recognize or notice that you're the right person
If
to
you're
pull this off?
doubting whether or not you're the right person, then you are the right person. Somebody that's the right person is not going to be asking themselves that question.
I love it. That's a wonderful way to end this. I don't know who by, but there's a famous saying again about politics. People who want to get into power shouldn't be allowed to get into power. Something along those lines. And I think there's a similarity here where maybe people who are too convinced of themselves, who see this as, oh, this is where I can prove myself. It won't work for them. It's more a humble journey, I guess, and not humble in the sense of you downplaying yourself, but it's not so much about you and more about the effect you
Agree
want to
with
have.
you, but if you're not so far at the beginning, for me, as I said, the being teased that maybe I am the one that can make this work. I mean, my ego really helped me at the beginning. I remember also
Mm.
thinking, I'm a big fan of level 5 leadership. from Collins, I remember thinking also, if I manage to do that, maybe I can finally be a level 5 leader. And yeah, this fully the ego. Yeah, that's not humble at all. This is self-interested. But that's what motivated me at the beginning, because I wasn't there yet to be humble. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
ego is not all bad. Sometimes it motivates to do also good things.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha, so much for sharing this, and not just sharing the story about the company and the transition, but also about your personal journey in it. I think that's what makes this discussion really lively and interesting to hear about. All right, what's behind it, and you said you became more human, and for sharing that human side of you. Very grateful that you took the time to do so.
Thank you so much.